Amen. Amen. You can go ahead and grab a seat. How's 11 o'clock service doing today? All right, you guys should be highly caffeinated, ready to rock and roll. So it should be a great day today. If we haven't met yet, my name is Pastor Greg Hintz, lead pastor here at the Place Church. We're excited to have you here today, the culmination, actually, of our January teaching series. We've done a series this month simply entitled Coming Home. And we sat nestled right in one chapter of the Gospel of Luke. In fact, it was one parable, one story from Luke chapter 15. But before we wrap it all up today, I want to begin today's message with a simple prayer, a prayer that we can say together. Will you repeat this with me? Lord, prepare my heart to receive, my ears to hear, and my mind to comprehend what you have for me today. Amen. So this entire month, we've been nestled in the book of Luke chapter 15. In fact, let's open up to that chapter now. If you have your Bible, you can use that. If not, there's a Bible in the seat back in front of you. You can go ahead and grab that. Luke chapter 15. And every single week, we've been talking a little bit more about a popular parable, a parable that is traditionally known as the parable of the prodigal son. Probably more accurately, it could be called the parable of the two sons. And if this is your first week and you're not familiar with that, let me just catch you up a little bit. There was a story of a man who had two sons, an older son and a younger son. The younger son said, "Dad, I want my inheritance. I know you're not dead yet, but go ahead and give me my money." So the dad does it. In fact, takes 1/3 of his net worth and gives it to the son. The son leaves the village, leaves his dad, and blows all his money, finds himself in a place where he's destitute, where he has nothing. Makes a decision, looking to the character of the father, that he's going to go home. He's not going to go home to be the son, though. He's going to go home to be a servant, to try to get a job working for his dad. Last week, we left it off where his dad sees him a far way off and takes off running. And we talked about that. In fact, if you weren't here, I would encourage you to get on wickenburgchurch.com, get on the Facebook site, watch last week's message, because that's super interesting about how the father takes the shame upon himself. And we unpacked that last week. But last week, what we did was we left the story in an embrace between the younger son and this father. And they came together. And in fact, last week, we talked about this verse. Let's pick up the story where we left off last week. Luke 15, starting in verse 22. It starts off like this. "But the father said to his servants, 'Bring quickly the best robe and put it on him. And then put a ring on his hand and shoes on his feet, and bring the fattened calf and kill it. And let us eat and celebrate. For this my son was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.' And they began to celebrate." So this is kind of where we left it last week. And you guys remember that we were talking about this son who was broken and dirty and messed up. This son who had messed up his life. He had burnt bridges with his village, with his community, with his family. He had disrespected his father. He had brought shame upon his entire family by losing 1/3 of the father's net worth. And this is the place where he found himself, was just this broken, messed up place. But when his dad sees him, his dad restores him. And we talked about what the father did was he took a robe. The Bible says the best robe, which was the father's robe. And so the father took his own robe and covered his son. We talked about how God covers us, covers over our sin and unrighteousness. We talked last week about the ring. The ring that the father took was a signet ring, a signature of authority that he gave back to his son, put that ring on his finger. We talked about how the son was barefoot, which was a sign of being destitute, and how the father sees that and put sandals on the feet of his son, telling the entire community that my son will never be destitute. I will always take care of his needs. And so in that moment, what we saw was the son become restored. We saw the younger son completely restored back to the family, back to the community, back to the relationship with his father. But we didn't talk about this. And that was, we see right nestled right in the midst of the verses that we saw. We saw this. And bring the fattened calf. This is the father speaking to the servants. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. And let us eat and let us celebrate. Now, we may hear that and we're like, oh yeah, that's really cool. But that actually has an incredible significance in this culture at this time, because it was abnormal for a Middle Eastern family at this time to eat meat. In fact, they didn't eat meat ever, except for a special celebration, for a special festivity. So it was normal for a family to have this calf that they were fattening, that they were feeding, that they were buying feed for, that they were making sure that it was fed, that it was getting fat, because one day there would come a celebration and they would have to kill this fattened calf. It happened very rarely because it was so expensive. I mean, you can imagine this father having to throw this party, this very expensive celebration, this very expensive party. But now that his son was lost and now is found, he decides that he's going to do that he's going to throw this very expensive party and kill this fattened calf because his younger son has returned home. And for many of us, we may believe that that's where the story ends. In fact, for some that are here, that you may be aware of this story of the prodigal son, this is what you remember. You remember a son who goes out and he comes back and he's restored by his father and there's a big party, period. But the problem is that that's not the story where this parable ends. That's why I would say, a lot of people say it's the parable of the prodigal son. No, I would say it's the parable of two sons. Because what is going to continue in this parable has to do not with this son, but has to do with the older son. In fact, let's look at it, starting in verse 25. It says, now the older son was in the field, and as he came and drew near to the house, he heard music and dancing. And he called one of the servants and asked what these things meant. And he said to him, your brother has come, and your father has killed the fattened calf because he has received him back safe and sound. But he, the older brother, was angry and refused to go in. His father came out and entreated him. You know, when we look at this, you know, this older son who'd been out working in the field, working for his dad, had been busy doing the right thing. He comes back close to the home, and all of a sudden he hears some rave music going, like the beat, doom, 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 doom. He sees people dancing, you know, people are out in front of the house falling over themselves. I mean, there's this incredibly epic party going down, and that older son is thinking, what the heck is happening? I didn't get an invitation to this. I didn't see this in my calendar. Is this scheduled? Because remember, this would have been a big deal to have this party. I mean, the older son is thinking to himself, surely I should have been keyed in on this thing. Surely I should have known about this thing. What on earth is taking place? What's going on here? And he's kind of bewildered. And then he calls one of the servants to him. And as he calls one of the servants to him, he asks him, what is going on? Seems to be this party going on. And then his servant answers, and he answers talking about the younger brother. And he says this, he says, your brother has come, and your father has killed the fattened calf, because he has received him back safe and sound. And so he tells him, your brother's back. And not only is he back, and so the fact that he said he received him safe and sound, what the older son knows now is that this younger son has been restored completely back into relationship with the father and ultimately with the family. Now, what does that mean for the older son? It means now he's going to have to share some of what he has with this younger son, but he's not really happy with the younger son's actions. And he gets really angry about the restoration of his brother. He gets angry about it. He gets upset about it. He gets mad about it. And he decides in his heart and mind that he's going to let the world know how angry he is. Now, I want you to remember who we're talking to here. Remember, week 1, we started talking about the audience of Jesus in Luke chapter 15. We said Luke 15, chapter 1, it said the audience of Jesus, the Bible tells us, was a bunch of sinners and tax collectors. You remember us talking about that? A bunch of people who had messed up, who were broken, who were far away from God, who when they looked in the mirror every morning saw a sinner and saw someone that God was angry with. That was who was here, right? That was who was in that place. But we also talked about the other people that were part of the audience of Jesus. Now, that was what the Bible describes as scribes and Pharisees. Now, scribes and Pharisees at this time, they were the religious elite. We would say they were the really religious people, the super, like if anyone said, who's going to heaven, they would say the scribes and the Pharisees. Like these people for sure, because they fast and they memorize the Bible and they pray really well, they're really, really righteous and they're really, really good and they're really, really heavenly. Okay? So that group is there, and almost as a representation of this older son, the Bible tells us that the father comes out and entreated him. The father comes out to find the son. Now, remember last week we talked about that younger son? And we talked about how the father was continually waiting, looking to the horizon, and saw him while he was a long way off and took off running, that he was looking for him. Well, now here the Bible tells us that he's in this party, and where's the older son? The older son refuses to go in. And so what does the father do? The father goes to the older son. You know, it's interesting for me when I think about this story because Jesus knew who he was talking to. You know, when he was talking about the younger son messing up his life, there were people that were like, yeah, totally, I get it. Like, that's me right now. He was speaking directly to those people. But now that he's talking about the older son, I bet there were some scribes and Pharisees that were thinking to themselves, that sounds a lot like me. That sounds a lot like something I would do. I'm kind of angry that Jesus is hanging out with sinners and tax collectors. Remember, that was a question the Pharisees would ask him a lot. They would go to the disciples and say, why does your master, why does your rabbi go and hang out with sinners and tax collectors? They were always talking about that. Maybe they thought that. So the father goes, and the actual word for entreated him means urge. And so the father is going from the party to the older son to urge him to be part of what's taking place, to urge him to be part of the celebration, to urge him to be part of what is taking place for this son who was lost but now is found. And so he goes and he finds him and he urges him. Now, the older son speaks to his father. Starting in verse 29, let's listen to what he says. He says, but he answered his father, look, these many years I have served you, and I never disobeyed your command. Yet you never gave me a young goat that I might celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours came, who has devoured your property with prostitutes, you killed the fattened calf for him. He sounds ticked off, doesn't he? Now, I want you to think about, in all honesty, think about your life, okay? Let's say you're coming near the end of your life. You've been working hard every day, and you've been saving. You get your 403B, 401K, 507Q. You got all the stuff, right? You got college funds for your kids, and you've done well. And you got a little nest egg. And your goal is that your kids and your grandkids won't have to struggle the way that you did. But you've struggled and you've made it pretty good. And then your son demands it. Now, imagine if your kid took a third of your net worth and blew it on prostitutes. Would you be angry? Come on, you're in church. You can't lie. You can't lie, all right? And remember, Jesus, he was angry too. In your anger, you can't sin, though. That's what the Bible said. Would you be angry? I hope you'd be angry. If you're not angry, there's something wrong with you. All right? If your kid took a third of your net worth, all of your money, and blew it on prostitutes, and you don't get angry, I got to check your pulse. Because I don't think you got one. If my kid does that, we're going to have a conversation. All right? I'm not going to be happy about that. I'm going to be angry. And I think that everyone gets it. I mean, when you hear that story, when we look at this older son, we get why he's angry. We get why he's mad. I mean, not only is his brother getting forgiven, but now his brother's going to be back in the family. There's a chance that he's going to get some of his stuff, but it's his reaction to his father. And now look at the first word. First word is look. Now, if you looked at that in the Greek, that is a very rude way to start a conversation, especially with your dad. It would be like this: what do you want? You ever have your kid talk to you like that? You know, you're like, hi, child, how are you today? What do you want? Oh, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to want in just a second. I'm going to come on over there. It's that kind of disrespect. Look, you know, like just come to, look. He's coming aggressively at his dad. And we see that, this disrespectful attitude towards the father. And Jesus is showing these older sons, these Pharisees and scribes, that they have an attitude towards what the father is doing and what the father is up to. And so he says, you know what, that disrespect, we got to deal with that. And then he goes on a little bit further, and he starts talking about what the older son is making reference to. He's saying, look, I've done this and I've done that, and I've never messed up, and but this son of yours, what this older son is doing is he's comparing his story to the younger son's story. See that? I've never done this. I've never done that. But look at the mess he's made. Look at the things that he does. And there's this comparison that begins to build in the hearts of this older brother, in the hearts of these scribes and Pharisees, because this is exactly how they've been reacting towards the work of God reaching out to the sinners and tax collectors. Now, the father didn't have to answer, but the father decides that he is going to answer. And we read his answer starting in verse 31. Listen to the father speaking back to the older son. He says this: and he said to him, the father to the older son, son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours. It was fitting to celebrate and be glad, for this your brother was dead and is alive. He was lost and is found. And so the father responds to this older brother. And really at the core of what he's communicating two things. He says these words: son, you're always with me, and all that is mine is yours. He's saying there's no need to be disrespectful, but you're called to honor me as your father. I want to tell you this: dad's going to do whatever dad wants to do. I don't know if you know that or not. But the same way God's going to do whatever God wants to do, even if you don't want him to do it. Look at Kanye West. I'm just saying, I didn't say it the last two services, that one's for you, all right? You know, you think about that, God, what are you doing? He's going to do what he wants to do. God's going to use who he wants to use. He's gonna save who he wants to save. God's God. And so for me to get disrespectful towards God, well, God, how can you do that? What's happening in the midst of that moment is I'm putting myself in God's position. It's not my business. God, you do what you're going to do. God, I'm just going to trust you, and I'm going to follow after you. And the other thing that he says is this. He said, all that is mine is yours. He's saying in your life, don't compare. Just be grateful. In your life, don't compare yourself to someone else, that you're not as bad as this person or that person. Just be grateful that God has chosen you. Be grateful that before the foundation of the earth, the Bible tells us in the book of Ephesians that he knew you, that he had purpose for you, that he loved you. And that purpose was for relationship. Now, see, I don't know about you, but when I think about my story, I relate to this whole thing, because when I look at this younger son, like when he came back, this idea of sinners and tax collectors, like I get it. Like this was me, except my life was more marked up and probably ripped in a couple places, all right? And it stunk really, really bad. I understand the messed up part. Is anyone else with me? All right, okay, good. You guys, can you remember that? Can you remember when you were all messed up? See, I remember that really, really clearly. And then God, in his grace, love, and mercy, found me. I wish I could say I found him, but I really believe that he found me. And I responded to his loving grace. And I surrendered my life. And I remember in that moment, even though I was not worthy, he clothed me in his righteousness. He saved me. That's a terminology that sometimes used. He saved me. He saved me from my sin. I understand this idea of being covered and being changed. But when I look back at my story, though, there was a season and there was a time when even though I was saved, covered, changed, there was a temptation early on to go over here and become this person. You know, when we start getting our life together, when we start living in victory and conquering, we start to look at others and think to ourselves, you're messed up. You are messed up, even though they're doing the same thing you were doing last year. You know what I mean? But we begin to look at other people and we begin to look at how messed up they are. Am I the only one that has done that? No, you've done it too. I got one. All right, I got one person. All right. Other people are like, I ain't never done that. You're a sinner. All right, but that's how I would live my life. All right, I would go about, and I could step into a room, and I could tell you, I'd be like, heaven, heaven, hell, hell. Oh, definitely hell. Hell, heaven, heaven. You know, and just be able to point at people, and based on what they're doing or how they're living or how they're acting or what they look like on the outside, I could quickly put them into categories. And in that season, in that time of my life, I was really becoming a Pharisee. I was really coming to this place where I said, they don't deserve that same grace that I was giving. And God, in his great love and in his great mercy, intervened in my life. And he spoke a simple word to me, and it's a word I'll share with you right now. What God spoke into my life was this: never forget where you come from. And I remember when those words, even as I say them now, I get those little God bumps, right? Those little goose pimples or whatever you call them. All right, because it was so profound for me to be called back to what he had saved me from where I was heading, from where I was going, from what I was doing. You know, this is a story I didn't tell in any other service, but I'm going to tell it right now. There was a time when I was probably 18, 19 years old. Me and my friends were morons, I'll just be honest with you. And we would do all kinds of stupid stuff. And I remember this one day, like 3 or 4 of us, we got together, we started playing with a Ouija board, right? Yeah, I know. It wasn't smart, all right? But the Lord has used it. And here, let me share with you what happened. So that thing started moving. You know, and it was moving. I know my friends were moving it, and as it was moving, it started to tell me how I was going to die, and it told me that I was going to die in a car accident coming back from the clubs in Cleveland in a drunk driving car accident, and it told me this, and I remember. Throw that thing in the garbage, right? I mean, I wasn't even serving Jesus. I didn't even know Jesus, but that was creepy. And my best friend who was with me was going to be in the car too. And the crazy part is that could easily have been fact. I found Jesus found me a couple years later. And it was early on in my walk that memory came back to my life. And the Lord spoke this to me. He said, that was the devil's plan for your life. And I remember just, what? The devil has a plan for your life too. God, in his great grace, rescued me from the devil's plan. That's what he does. That's what he wants to do for you too. Do you know in your life, the devil has a plan for your life too? You know, the Bible's taught his plan to kill, to steal, and to destroy. That's what he said. That's the thief. He comes to do that. That plan that was exposed in that moment was exactly that, death and destruction. That was his plan for my life. But see, it doesn't stop there, because Jesus goes on to say this, but I've come that you may have life and life in abundance. You see, God has another plan, a plan of abundant life for you. And so when you come to that crossroads and say, is it my way or God's way? I want to encourage you every single day in every way to say, today I'm choosing to follow after Jesus. I'm choosing to follow after God. And as you take those steps and as you begin to walk into that abundant life that God has for you. So never forget where you came from. Never forget what God saved you from. And when you're looking at the lives of other people, look to them always not through the eyes of judgment, but through the eyes of grace and love and mercy, realizing but for the grace of God, you wouldn't be where you are today. His grace is abundant. His love, his mercy is new every day. Don't ever forget that. The moment that you find yourself beginning to judge everyone else around you, remember where you were and remember his love in your life that brought you to where you are today. Now, let me tell you the next words of Jesus. Now, he just said this. He said, it was fitting to celebrate the son. Your brother was dead and he is alive. He was lost and now is found. And then Jesus says, nothing. That's it. And the story ends there. Like, Jesus leaves us with this huge cliffhanger, right? Like, what's going to happen? Is the older son going to go into the party or not go into the party? Is the older son going to reach out to the younger son? Are they going to hug it out? Or are they going to come back into relationship? Is the family going to come together again with the dad? We have no idea, because Jesus doesn't finish the story. And I think Jesus didn't finish the story on purpose. I think as he was looking out, the people began to realize the younger brother was the sinners and tax collectors in the audience. The older brother were the Pharisees and scribes in the audience. And it's almost like he's looking at them and saying, what will you choose? It reminds me of when I was young, I used to read these choose your own adventure books. Anyone ever read those? You start reading them, right? And it was like, if you want to jump off a cliff, turn to page 76. If you want to swim to Neptune, turn to page 94. And you'd make these decisions as you go, and it would dictate the story that you would read. I think when you look at your life, a lot of times Jesus in the midst of this moment is laying it out, because it's not just a story for sinners and tax collectors. It's not just a story for Pharisees and scribes. It's a story for you, and it's a story for me. How does the story end? Depends on the decisions that you make. You can live your life like a Pharisee and scribe. Many do. Looking down, judging everyone else, putting everyone in boxes. If you want to do that, you can do that. Or you can take the words of Jesus, giving a great example of the grace and mercy and celebration that comes through his forgiveness, and say, that's the life I'm going to choose to live. In your life every day, I want to encourage you, choose the way of the younger brother. Choose the way of following after Jesus. Never forget what he's brought you from. Never lose focus of what he's calling you to. And every day, thank him and live in gratefulness for what he's doing in your life today. Amen? Let's pray. Will you bow your heads? Oh, God, I thank you so much for your plans. Just reminded of your grace and your mercy and your love. Reminded of how you've rescued each and every single one of us from the plans of the enemy. How the enemy had a plan for each person here, but God, in your great love and your mercy, you have intervened in their life. And you have poured into their life that mercy and grace and love. God, I pray today that becomes real in our hearts, real in our lives. And maybe you're even hearing this story and you've heard this parable and you think to yourself, man, that's what I want. I want the love of the Father. I want his grace and mercy to be present and evident in my life. I'm ready to surrender everything to him. And if so, here's what I want to do. If that's you, I just want to say a simple prayer. If you're looking in your heart and you're saying, you know what? I want to choose God's plan for my life. I want to choose Jesus's path today. On the count of 3, here's what I want you to respond with. On the count of 3, I'm just going to ask you to lift your hand up if that's you. If you're ready to surrender your heart, your life, your future to Jesus today. On the count of 3, I just want you to lift your hand up. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Lift it up high so I can see it. I see you, 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 I see you. Hands all over this place. Okay, now we're going to pray. And if you lifted up your hand, I want you to pray this prayer out loud. If you're already following Jesus, I want you to pray this prayer with those praying it for the first time. Say these words. Say, Jesus, I'm sorry for my past, for my sin, for my mistakes. But today, I turn to you and I run to you and I ask you to forgive me. Jesus, I believe that you lived, that you died, and that you rose again, and that you have a plan for me. Help me see me through your eyes. Now let me pray for you. Father, I pray for each and every single person that prayed that prayer today. I pray, Lord, that you make your home in their hearts. I pray, Father, that you fill them with joy and peace and love. I pray, Father, that you fill them with a sense of belonging. I pray that they know right now, and listen, if you're hearing my words right now, I want you to know this, that God is reaching into the depths of your darkness and rescuing you right now. He's pulling you out right now. He's placing you in a new place right now. And when you leave this place, I want you to remember that. And you just begin to thank God. God, I thank you that you saved me. God, I thank you that you pulled me out. God, I thank you that you're with me. God, I thank you that you'll never leave me or never forsake me. God, I thank you that your plans are perfect for my life. And I want you to begin to live that out today and every day. Begin to walk the path of Jesus. When you come to the crossroads, choose Christ. Let him be him in your life. God, thank you. Amen. Amen. We guys give it up for all those that prayed that prayer today. Now.